Zero Leader, the World War II Pacific Theater solitaire game. This is a game published by DVG in the line of Air Leader games that was also developed into solitaire games depicting sea warfare and land warfare. But the air ones, as far as I can tell, were the early ones. At least those are the first ones that I played. And I played them quite a bit back in the day, in the early 2010s. And I haven't played one in a couple of years. I don't know why, just because I guess life has become a little busy and a little weird. So I was able to reconnect with this game series that has given me so much joy in the past. Relearning the leader system was not too bad, and basically I did like I did when I first learned it, which is do not try to read the rulebook cover to cover. It just doesn't work that way. Start doing the things that the rulebook says as you read them for the first time. It explains how to set up a campaign, start setting up a campaign. It explains how to set up a mission, start setting up a mission. Of course, you will kind of suck at the beginning because you don't know what you're doing. You'll make terrible choices. But experience has taught me back in the day that I tried to optimize things from mission number 1. And I still sucked. I still showed up on the target with the wrong weapons and that kind of stuff. So don't worry about it. Learn the game as you played. It is still, like other DVG games, has a certain amount of density when it comes to the rules. There's just something about some of these games. I feel like you have to learn every rule to understand some of the rules. Meaning, sometimes there's rule A that only makes sense if you know rule B, and rule B only makes sense if you know rule A. I just find that there isn't a way of learning it chunk by chunk, by almost you have to swallow it whole in one big gulp, which again, you can sort of do if you learn it by play. However, if you played other games in the system recently, that should help you because this game is very, very, very similar to previous Air Leader games that I played. Matter of fact, one big point of my conclusion is, if you like the system, you're probably going to enjoy this one. If you don't like the system, this is not going to change your mind because it is just so deeply based on the same idea. With some variants, of course, to fit the fact that now we are Japanese pilots attacking American forces in the Pacific, but the general idea, the family, the philosophy, the pace is the same. So that's not gonna, I believe, gain any new acolytes to the game system. Now, the idea is still that you will be managing a group of pilots over a number of missions during a campaign. So the first thing that you do is to choose the campaign that you will play. You got a really nice range of campaigns here, each coming with its unique sheet that tells you the forces that you have available, the targets that you will have to face. And since I'm filming this video on December 7th, I've decided to set up the Pearl Harbor campaign. And again, as you can see, that will tell you what you will attack, who is available to you, the reinforcements, the enemies that you will have, a general map that really gives you the sense of the action, other information based on how long the campaign that you want to play will be. You can have it short, medium, or long with different kinds of evaluations and different amounts of resources that you can spend to buy advantages such as promoting your pilots before the game even starts and getting extra maintenance crew and things like that. And recon and intel, these are things that will change over time, depending on how the situation evolves. You will have a cup where you will place the enemies that then will go on the board. You have a tactical display. Basically, I already set up a mission for this campaign here. But of course, you have the pilots. And one thing that I always liked about the Air Leader system is how it combines the machine and the person. So you will have cards representing your forces, and each force represents a pilot in a specific kind of aircraft. Not all aircraft are available in every period. Again, it depends on the mission. But I like the fact that the aircraft is the aircraft, but the pilot, the man inside, changes. So each pilot is defined by 3 cards representing 3 possible states, from newbie and then they can get promoted all the way to legendary. And the stats, the information change. For example, here I have my good friend Morita, who always says stuff like, it's okay to lose to enemy, not okay to lose to fear. I don't know what he's always talking about. But so first you have the rank, that may change over time, and then a lot of information. Again, this kind of game is probably not ideal for new war gamers unless they're willing to put in some homework, they're willing to do some work there, because there's a lot of information to take into account, such as maneuverability of the aircraft, robustness, cool, which will affect the stress, situational awareness, if you have them. Right now, my friend Morita is not particularly situationally aware. But if you have them, these are counters that you can spend to gain extra attacks. Samurai Spirit, super important. These are tokens that can be spent to gain different kinds of advantages, such as avoiding a negative result or scoring an automatic 10 on an attack die roll, which can be very key at the right time. Agility, weight points that, no, not agility, aggression, weight points that you can carry. Different stats that will be based on the amount of stress that you collect during the mission. Again, one of the things that shines to me in the system. You see the struggle of the person flying these aircraft as terrible things happen. Their stress increases, and so that may change their status, may change when they attack, fast or slow, fast they attack before the enemy, slow after, may change the modifiers for air-to-air and air-to-ground combat. Then you also have what kind of stuff, ordnance the aircraft can carry. The guns value, simply when you're attacking other aircraft, when you roll and you apply all modifiers, if you roll equal to or higher than your guns value, you're destroyed. The enemy bandit, and also a bonus, a modifier that applies when you're diving. Different from other air leader games, in this game, when you set the altitude of your pilots at the beginning of a mission, it stays so, whether high or low, it stays so for the rest of the mission, with one exception. If your aircraft has the dive notation, you can start from high, and then once per mission you can dive and go to low, and then you will stay in low for the rest of the mission. So once you have your pilots, you prepared your target card, you will have a log with all the information of your pilots. And it's basically time to start. You will select a target out of several possible targets. You will place the target card in the middle of the tactical display, and that will tell you how many hits you need to inflict on the target to destroy it, the number of sights that you will place randomly in the approach area and in the target area around it, and the number of bandits that you will place later in the mission when your pilots actually show up on the site, because this is a little more unpredictable. I already placed them on the board just because I wanted to show you how we will look. Victory points and other possible notations. So basically, once the main action starts, the board may look like this, with your pilots that you will place in one or more of the pre-approaching areas around the board, with enemies in the approach areas, and with the target card in the target area, and probably also with other enemies there, again represented by those counters. As for your pilots, once you set them up and ready them for the mission, giving them Samurai Spirits tokens, situational awareness tokens, and placing weapons on them, they may look something like this. So there is, again, a little bit of preparation, but when you become familiar with the system, part of the pleasure is actually precising the logistics, and to me the system is really good at creating that balance between the operational aspect of managing resources, human and material resources over time, and then the detail, the tactical element when it comes to the action. So we finally get to the action. When the flight arrives, we need to draw an event card to see if, or better to say, what happens on the way to the target. Once we get to the target, then we'll place the bandits. Our aircraft have been placed at specific altitudes at the beginning, and then we finally get to the main session of the game. Again, in terms of how much time you spend, I don't know that is the main session. I think really you spend probably as much time setting up a mission, debriefing, thinking about how to use resources as you spend on the target, and that's okay. That gives the game its unique flow. And again, since as you can see the game has many steps and will probably feel a little bit threatening to new players, luckily enough we have a very detailed sequence of play here on the tactical display itself. So when we are over the target, we have up to 5 turns to bomb the excrements out of our target. And these are the steps we're going to repeat in each over the target turn, again, up to 5 times. Also, specific to this game, you can assign the kamikaze designation to some of your pilots. As you can imagine, you'll have several advantages based on that. For example, they really don't care about stress anymore. They're pretty chill, but they're not coming back. In a nutshell, those are some of the main things, but other things also apply there. Then fast pilots that are in an area where they can attack, a target will attack. And so, for example, if they are in an area with an enemy bandit, they may fight with the bandit. If they are in an area with the target, they'll probably want to attack that target by dropping those bombs. I'm going to give you the general script of the over the target sequence, and then I'm gonna tell you more about combat. But still, the idea is, again, targets with the pilots with the fast designation will get to attack at this point, at this step. If you don't have that, you may spend, or even if you have that, you may spend situational awareness. Then the enemies will attack you. Then finally, the surviving slow pilots will get to attack. And also, again, at that point, counters that can move will move, looking for targets, and this is the general idea. Again, when you look through all of the logistics, it's move and attack, and that's really the core of most war games there. When it comes to attacking ground targets is pretty similar to what you will know from the other systems, which is you will drop bombs on your targets and roll dice, apply modifiers based on a variety of things, and then in the dice that you roll here to resolve combat or D10s, you will match those results with the numbers written here in the top right corner. This indication here is how heavy those weapons are, which tells you how many you can carry in each aircraft. If you roll lower than the number or the leftmost number in that section there, that's a miss. If you roll equal to or higher than a single number there, that's a hit. If there are multiple numbers, if you roll equal to or higher than the first, but not as high as the second, you score a hit. If you roll equal to or higher than the second, you score 2 hits. And that's the general idea that will also apply to other kinds of attacks, such as the attacks that they inflict on you. Because when the enemies attack you, for example, again, you will apply modifiers, and if they attack you and is lower than the lowest number, no problem, that's a miss. If it's equal to or higher than the first number, you take a stress, for example, but not matching the second. Now, if it gets closer to the second number, and there are different ways in which different targets operate that, on top of the stress, you also get a minor damage represented by this counter here, which goes directly on the card of your pilot, looking like that, and it's pretty cool. Now, minor damage for now is not too bad. It's not too bad. It doesn't do anything yet, but if you take another minor damage, then it becomes a full damage. I lost that counter. It fell on the floor. I hope the cats don't eat it. Becomes a full damage. 2 full damage, well, you go down in flames. Also, even if I have a minor damage at the end of the game, you will at the end of the mission, you will get extra stress as the paddle steps out and says, holy wow, look what happened there. Boom, extra stress. And of course, if the number is high enough, then you go kablooey right away. So that's how they attack you, especially when it comes, well, that's the general idea for attacking. And that's all that you got to worry about if you are fighting, if they are being shot at by ground forces. When it comes to air versus air, this system is more complex. This game is more complex than other air leader games because you borrow some ideas about dogfighting from another games by DVG, from the Down in Flames games. In those games, if you played them, they are games of air combat using cards, and they do keep track of the relative orientation of the aircraft. So basically here, when enemies engage each other in air, they start from a neutral position, they're facing each other. And then, looking at my guy here, they can have an advantage on the opponent if the opponent is on the side. They may be tailing the opponent. They may be at a disadvantage. Oh, now I'm on the side and the opponent is looking at me, or I may be tailed. What happens here is this. While in other air leader games that I play, it's about rolling dice and again applying modifiers and scoring a hit if you equal or exceed your gun's value. Here you have a whole dogfighting procedure in which you get to choose maneuvers. You get to choose maneuvers. And so, and not all maneuvers are available at all times, but when it's your turn to attack, you will choose a maneuver, you will roll a die, and different maneuvers have different things that happen based on how risky they are. And they may influence the position, so you rotate those counters to take to register that, and or modifiers to the attack values. The position itself, of course, also will modify the attack value. After you execute your maneuver, which may put you in a position where you don't get to fire at all, after you execute the maneuver, you may be able to fire. At that point, you apply modifiers, which, and again, it's all about the modifiers. But you apply all modifiers and you see if you scored a hit or not. When the bandits attack you, depending on the position, you will roll, depending on the position that is relative, are they an advantage or neutral or disadvantage? Based on the position that you're at, you roll a die for them, and that indicates the kind of maneuver they perform. Then you roll to resolve that maneuver. And finally, you see how that affects the position and if you are going kablooey or getting really stressed out about that or not. After that, you have several segments, several elements that you will know if you played the games in the air leader system. But these are basically the general ideas, and the dogfighting system is the biggest modification to the system from other games in the air leader system that they play. So play multiple rounds over the target, see how well or poorly you did, possibly score points, gain experience, go back home, resolve events on the way back to base, debrief your pilots, evaluate the mission, and then start another mission. And you continue like this, mission after mission, until you have completed the campaign. And at the point, you see how many points you scored and how well or poorly you did. I like the air leader system. I like this game very much, and partially for reasons that I already started telling you about, because I couldn't wait until the conclusions. I had to tell you how the air leader system manages to implement well the human element of warfare, the human toll of warfare. You see the machine, but you see also the man that is in there and is brave and has the samurai spirit even. But ultimately, we're all human, and there is a toll that will, of course, increase the challenge, make it harder and harder. You, as the leader of this group, you'll have to make tougher decisions as the campaign progresses, when you're forced to fly men that you wish you could leave at home, but the imperative of war is there, and you have to match it, and you have to make those subpar decisions. I think this game, as other games in the air leader system, does that very, very well. with the samurai spirit element that gives you an extra resource here. But you really have to like that element of budgeting, of bookkeeping, which in so many other games may feel like just, that's outside of the game, it's annoying, it's boring. But here, to me, is a really vital element of the game. Again, you have that balance between the mission, which is where all the action is, where all the movie kind of action you can expect, and the other stuff, the logistics, the debriefing, the preparing the mission, equipping the aircraft, spending the special operation points that may feel foreign to the experience, but to me they work seamlessly. You really get a narrative as you play in the campaign and you're using these resources, and you have these moments or apparent break again between missions as you clean up one and you set up the next, but where the tension is mounting and you don't know where the enemies will be and you have to decide the next target and so on and so forth. Again, the connection between the logistics and the tactical in the air leader system has always been strong, and this game is no exception. The biggest difference here, with the exception, of course, you have different airplanes, different aircraft, different campaigns, so different theater of operation. But overall, those things don't bring a huge difference, really. Knowing that a Japanese pilot on this card will become from fast to slow after taking some stress, or in another game, it was another pilot with another name for another nationality. The overall idea is not that different. The biggest difference is in the dogfight system that I hadn't seen in the early air leader games that I play. If it came out in one that, between the last ones that they played a couple of years ago and this one, I'm not aware. This is the first time I encountered the dogfighting system in an air leader game. But I had encountered it, of course, in Down in Flame games. I like it. At the beginning, I did have some mixed feelings because I was already, going back into the whole idea. So I had to relearn the system plus this new thing. And it didn't feel all that necessary. And I think actually if you're struggling to learn the game, maybe at the beginning, you can try without it. Just try, with the bare naked numbers until you become comfortable with the foundation of the game. Well, once you have that, then you get into an even more vivid level of detail when you're zooming in than in other games, because you're really seeing the actual position of these aircraft as they are maneuvering, as they're doing different things, as opportunities present themselves and then they disappear. It adds a larger element of randomness because of this, because I have everything that it's amazing. I got the right pilot, the right situation, and then since I'm adding an extra die roll, basically, then I just end up to be not aligned for the right shot. But it is a game where there are enough die rolls that you get the situation of the bell, of the curve, that crazy die rolls one way or another will tend to equalize each other. They will tend to get into numbers that are big enough that, again, they will tend towards the average. And so you feel that although there is a large element of randomness at every element of the campaign, overall gameplay, good decision making will be rewarded, because from the first times where you can't even make it to the target, you realize there is no point of making it to the target, to when you finally scored that one hit and then you actually finally take down the target. That will be very satisfying. So the dogfighting system, the biggest difference to me, adds a lot to the tactical quality of the game, but it also requires that extra investment, that extra involvement at the beginning especially. So even with that difference, which to me is fairly significant, I don't think that in the bigger scheme of things that is enough to change anyone's opinion about the system in general, and therefore about this game, because it is such a close experience to previous installments in the game that ultimately my conclusions could boil down to, well, if you like previous games in the system, you're definitely going to like this one because it is so closely aligned to the general idea. if they were too fiddly, too much bookkeeping, too many steps, too many modifiers to keep track of, if you had that feeling with previous games, you will have the same. You will find the same obstacle here, and I don't think that's gonna change either. So a game that definitely is I would recommend for people who already know the system and they wanna play it in a different scenario with different elements and a little bit of different touches here and there. If you've never played the system, I don't think this is the best to start, precisely because there are other games that have the same core idea without the dogfighting system, and so those other games are easier to get into than this one. But I do happen to have played other games in the system. I do happen to like the system, and so I definitely enjoy Zero Leader.